Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex, from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And if you are new to the channel, what we do here is release weekly videos teaching people how to produce music on their iOS device. And in today's video, we're going to be going through a few different techniques that are commonly used inside synthwave productions right after this. And remember folks, if you do enjoy this content, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Now this week's video is continuing our focus on the synthwave genre to celebrate our recently released completely free synthwave sample pack. And if you aren't yet familiar with this genre or its history, definitely make sure to check out our previous two videos. And of course, we'll make sure to link those right up there and in the description below. But to make a long story short, the synthwave genre is essentially a modern take on some of the most popular 80s sounds found in video games and movies of that same era. Now the 80s certainly was an interesting time, as that was when synthesizers were first becoming popular, and it was a time of heavily processed effects. Pretty much everything had to have huge amounts of reverb or some huge synth lead. And just a quick side note that most of the techniques that we'll be learning today aren't just unique to synthwave. In fact, they're actually applicable to a wide range of genres. Alright, and now with that intro aside, let's get right into learning some of these synthwave production techniques. Now, really quick, we will be showing you all of these techniques inside of Cubasis 3, which is our DAW of choice here at Mobile Music Pro, but you can use and apply these techniques to virtually any DAW. And remember again that professional productions are made up of a series of these type of techniques. It's usually not any one single technique that makes the difference, it's the combination of multiple techniques that allows you to make your song sound like a specific genre. Okay, now let's jump into our very first technique, which is going to be called the gated snare. Now the reason why it's called a gated snare is because that's exactly what we're doing, is we are applying a noise gate on top of a snare. And the reason that we're doing that is so that we can tame the reverb to achieve a very specific effect. So first, let's listen to this drum beat without any reverb or any noise gate. And the sounds that we are using for that drum pattern is found in the classic machines in-app purchase inside of Cubasis 3. That is a pretty great purchase. They have a bunch of classic machines in there. So now let's throw some reverb on that snare and hear what that sounds like. Okay, we're getting pretty close to that 80s sound, but now let's throw on the noise gate on top of that reverb and hear what that sounds like. Alright, and now you definitely are getting very close to that 80s sound. So how we set that up is first we just added a reverb onto the snare, a pretty basic reverb with the default preset. Really nothing too special in here. And then after the reverb, we threw on a noise gate. And this is the final piece of the puzzle that really brings in that 80s sounding drums. So what a noise gate does is essentially act like a compressor. What it does is it lets in some sound and then cuts off that sound after a certain threshold. So what we'll do here is just play with a few of these settings. Let's turn this range and this release all the way down, and the attack all the way down as well. And what I'm going to do is move these a little bit as the sound is playing so you can get a feel for what it's actually doing. Alright, so let's hit play and start playing. So you can see here that we have the range at 100%, which means that we are letting in 100% of the sound. So now let's move that back to around 30 or 40 or so for this particular effect. And now we'll increase the attack and release so you can hear what that sounds like. Alright, and we're going to set that probably around 10 here to make sure that that sounds good for this effect. And now let's play with the release. Alright, so as you can hear there, the attack and the release make a pretty big difference. So what we're essentially trying to do here is we're trying to grab the reverb of that snare and cut it off just a little bit and tame it down so that it doesn't extend into the next sound. And that grabbing and that cutting off of the reverb is what essentially makes this 80s effect. So now let's set our release back down here to around 20 or 30 or so, I think is where this effect sounds good. Let's try this out. Alright, and that is pretty much the effect, folks. We are essentially throwing a noise gate on top of the reverb for that snare, so that we can actually gate that reverb and cut it off after a certain amount of time. Alright, and the second technique that we're going to take a look at today for synthwave production is filter sweeps and transitions. Now, even if you're not familiar with these terms, I guarantee you have heard them in popular tracks before. Now, all a filter sweep actually is starting with the filter closed and then gradually opening it as the song continues. And we used that technique a couple times in this particular synthwave track. We use it right away in the intro, and we also use it for the pre-chorus. So let's first hear an example of this filter sweep in the intro. Alright, now what you heard there was all of the melodies and all of the bass sounds filtered down in the beginning. And then as the song was playing, we gradually started to open that filter up. So if we take a look at our project here, as you can see, we have several tracks inside of this chord bus. So if we look at the routing, we can take a look and see we have 3 separate tracks currently routed to this group. If we scroll down, we can see which ones those are, and there they are, the chords ARP, and the chords brass. Now on this particular bus, we have an insert effect, and that is the filter. And if we go to the beginning of the song, you can see that the filter starts out here in the beginning, and then it will gradually go to the end. So it will start out closed, and it will gradually open up as the song continues. So let's watch this play out right now, and hit play. And this type of transitioning effect works on pretty much any genre as well. Specifically though, it is used heavily in electronic genres such as synthwave. Now let's hear one more example of this in our pre-chorus. Here what we've done is, in addition to doing a filter sweep and filtering down these basses and these pianos and these chords, we've also removed the drums. Now we've done this so that we can create more drama and let the listener know that we're currently in a drop and that there will be something coming at the end of this measure. So let's now take a listen to what this sounds like. Now, as you can hear, when we filter down the sounds, it definitely starts creating some of this drama, some of this suspense. And then as the song continues to play and we gradually bring that filter back up, this definitely signals to the listener that something is about to happen. Now, the next part of this technique I want to talk about is transitions and fills. Now, those filter sweeps can sort of be considered a transition, but what I want to talk about now is those more shorter transitions that appear at the end of every measure. And let's hear an example of that now. What you're going to notice is the drums are all going to cut out, and then this drum fill will play. So let's hear what that sounds like. Now, transitions and drum fills like this definitely signal to the listener that the measure has ended and something else is about to start. Adding these types of things to your song does add additional drama and additional creativity, and it makes your song more interesting. And now I just briefly want to mention one of these transition methods. So this is going to be very similar to a filter sweep, except we're not going to start with the filter completely down, and we're not going to crank the filter completely up at the end. And what you want to do with this technique is typically apply it right before you go into the next section of a song, like a pre-chorus or the main chorus itself. Now, what I've done here for both of these bass sounds is I've made sure that the filter goes up just a little bit right before the transition to the next part of the song. And the reason to do this is the same reason that we do all these other effects, and that is to build tension, to create drama, and make the song that much more interesting to listen to. So first we're going to hear the bass just by itself, and then we're going to hear it in the context of the song. Alright, and we're actually using two different types of filters here. For the main filter sweep, we're going to use the native filter built into Cubasis. But to give these bass sounds just a little bit of extra edge right before the transition there, we're actually using the filter on the synthesizer itself. Alright, and now let's hear what this sounds like in the context of the song. Again, pay attention to these bass sounds right before we hit the pre-chorus. So hopefully you can hear that definitely builds some extra tension and some extra drama, letting the listener know that there is something coming and what we're hearing now is about to change. Alright, and the next technique that we're going to cover that you're going to need to know to create synthwave productions is sidechaining. Now you may have heard this term before, but it is relatively simple to get your head around. Though this technique is used in pretty much every single genre today, outside of electronic genres, it's pretty much used very subtly. So let's take a listen to this effect now, and you'll definitely recognize it from many popular songs on the radio. So we're going to solo our chord track here and hit play. The end goal of the sidechain effect is to provide more room for your kick drum and to create that rhythmic pumping effect that makes people bob their head. Now we're using the Bleece Sidekick app to achieve this sidechain effect, but with the recent update from Cubasis version 3.3, you can actually do this native inside the channel strip. To use the native sidechaining effect inside of Cubasis, all you have to do is pull up a channel strip and then tap this button here and choose your sidechain input track. Here we've chosen our kick track. And then from there, you just bring down your threshold to taste until it sounds good. So now let's hear this with the native sidechaining effect from Cubasis 3. Now one quick thing to mention though, if you are sidechaining to a kick, you are going to have to make sure that that kick continues to play if you still want that effect. You might have heard real quick that we took out the kick there at the end of that phrase, so it stopped sidechaining. And this is partially the reason why I sometimes use third-party effects, because apps like Bleece Sidekick effectively fake the sidechain effect and doesn't actually use the input signal from another track like the kick track. So that's basically to say that it's not dependent on another track. Now let's again listen to this chord track with that sidechain effect on in the context of the entire mix. So as you can hear, that effect is great for creating additional space in the mix and making sure that your listener bobs their head. Alright, and the final technique that we'll be discussing today that you need to know for making synthwave productions is using 80s effects. Now that may sound kind of obvious, but not every single plugin can really achieve 80s style effects. And in fact, some plugins were specifically designed to get some of that 80s sound. And a couple of plugins like that is FAC Chorus and Adverb 2. Now the FAC Chorus definitely gives you that DX 80s synthesizer type of chorus. And the adverb will definitely give you that 80s style reverb. So let's give you an idea of what we mean by using these effects. So I have a sound pulled up here from the Xeon synth. And what I want you to listen for is the difference between the dry sound and the wet sound using this chorus and adverb 2. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play a couple of these notes and I'll disable and enable these effects. So definitely makes a difference with these effects. You can definitely hear that. And again, let's just turn that off real quick. And let's enable that. And let's just play one more riff here with these effects turned off, and then we'll enable it. Definitely a big difference there. All right, and now let's hear these sounds in the context of the mix. Alright, beautiful. And as we said on this channel, and we'll keep saying on this channel, it really is all about making these little subtle changes and having them all add up to change the mix quite dramatically. All of these little individual settings and these individual effects don't really make that much difference by themselves. But when you add them up, that's where you get the magic, and that's where you get the difference between a professional production and an amateur production. Alright folks, and now it's time for our final thoughts. And if you are still rocking with us, then we can't thank you enough for being here. And we especially can't thank those people enough that are here every single Wednesday and Friday to watch the live streams and live premieres. Now we hope that some of these techniques can help you in your productions and make your tracks sound just that much better. We did only give you a few different techniques here, so definitely make sure to do some more research if you do plan on making songs in this genre. Because though Synthwave is relatively new, there is already a bunch of subgenres popping up all over the place, with the latest trend being more of a dark, industrial cyberpunk type sound, inspired by the recently released and very much overhyped video game Cyberpunk. And then of course I'm sure that will evolve into something else, as music is always in flux and always changing. And just a quick reminder that our recent sample pack contest did just end on Wednesday, May 19th, and we're going to reveal the winner during next week's live stream on May 26th. Now we're not actually going to be making too much music on that stream because we're going to be playing a bunch of contest entries. We're going to of course cover the top 4, but we're also going to play a bunch of honorable mentions as well, and some additional entries after that. So we're pretty much going to be playing back your tracks during the entire stream, so definitely make sure to join us. It's going to be super fun. And of course, we always have a ton more content coming your way, folks, so if you do want to keep up with everything that we're doing over here, from contests to sample packs to videos, giveaways, and more, then definitely make sure to head on over to our website, MobileMusicPro.com, and sign up for our completely free mailing list. And so, until next time, everybody, keep talking music, and we'll see you later.